Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this afternoon's event, and it's my great honor to say a few words of introduction and then to this afternoon's speaker, Dr. Lobsang Sangay. It turns out that Dr. Sangay and I arrived at Harvard in the same year, in 1995. He had already completed his BA and Bachelor of Law degrees at Delhi University in 1992 and was a member of the Center Executive of the Tibetan Youth Congress. After his come to Harvard on a Fulbright, he continued the study of law and was awarded a master's degree in 1996, and in 2004 he earned his doctoral degree in law. He was, and perhaps still is, the first Tibetan intellectual to have done so. While at Harvard, Dr. Sangay has been engaged in organizing and taking part in a series of non-official conversations between Tibetan and Han Chinese scholars, diplomats, and government officials. Periodic meetings were held here at Harvard to this effect over the last decade or so. He's lectured and continues to lecture widely on contemporary Tibetan issues in the United States and abroad. After much soul-searching, he decided to become a candidate for the post of Kalon Tripa, roughly the equivalent of Prime Minister, for the Tibetan government exile that is centered in Dharamsala, India. The election results will be officially posted tomorrow evening, but the pre-election talk of various towns suggests that Dr. Sangay has handily won the elections. I look forward to addressing him as Mr. Prime Minister, or Mr. Kalon Tripa, if I'm fortunate to introduce him next time he gives a speech at Harvard. The timing of this particular election is crucial. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has officially retired from political life, so that the position of Kalon Tripa, or Prime Minister, has therefore gained much in importance. Indeed, we may be at a critical juncture, and it is my personal hope, as it is the hope of many, that a political solution may be reached between the Tibetan government in exile and the Chinese government. In this afternoon's speech, Dr. Sangay will speak on the role of the Kalon Tripa, his own campaign, and the electoral process that led up to the election. After his talk, perhaps the last before the election results are officially posted, we will have around 50 minutes, that is 50 minutes, during which time Dr. Sangay will take questions and comments on his speech, that is, on the substance of the speech that he has just given. Please join me now in welcoming Dr. Sangay.
Thank you, Professor Wandakai, for your kind introduction. And after 16 years, if I get elected as you predicted, then you still get to enjoy Harvard University then. But I have to go to India, rather return to India and take the responsibility. So we'll see what happens tomorrow night. Definitely by Wednesday morning, we will know the result. And maybe I'll continue to stay here. Then you get to hear how I lost the election, you know. That might be the next topic of my talk. Actually, when we planned for this talk, I just came to say, you know, hello to Professor Merle Goldman and Lydia Chen. And it so happened that they suggested I give a talk. And at that time, I agreed. And I also thought it might be quite interesting, perhaps exciting, to do it 2 days before, or a day before the result is announced. But then now I'm realizing that timing was really bad, because I get tons of requests from media, especially through email, and my phone keeps ringing. Then I have to, you know, reply to a lot of media. The question is always, if you get elected, what would you do? What are your priorities? Things like that. And I've been trying to cope all that, as Professor Wandakai reminded me during lunch, without an assistant. So far, I've been handling it okay. From tomorrow on, let's see what happens. When the rubber hits the road, the reality will come in. Perhaps this might be the best day of my pre-election day, right? When I look back, that was the best day, you know. The reality checks in. Perhaps this might be the honeymoon of my campaign, so to speak, when I go back to Dharamsala and assume responsibility. If I get elected, then I realize that, oh, maybe this is what I did not bargain for, so to speak, you know. Then I'll be sending you a lot of, you know, emails. Do keep those emails private. And what I'll do is, then because it's not a good time for the talk, because I've been juggling a lot of things, and I thought perhaps I should start with a lot of some pictures of my camping trips, so give you the brighter side of it. Then I'll try to do some heavy lifting at the end. What does it mean? What is Tibetan government exile? What are the responsibilities? Things like that. So these are the three candidates, as you can see. The one in the middle is Kungotashi Wongdila, veteran diplomat. He has been in the service of the Tibetan government exile for the last 40 years, ministers of many departments, and this side is former Prime Minister Tenzing Tedongla, and over that side is me. So as you can, so we were the remaining candidates for the post. In the preliminary round, actually, there were other three additional candidates. One was the Speaker of the Parliament, Deputy Speaker, and Private Secretary of His Holiness Dalai Lama for 15 years. So I was going kind of against, should I say, or competing with 5 really veterans of Tibetan government exile. And it so happened that I was not only the youngest, but also the least experienced, in the sense I have never worked in the government exile for even a single day. So I'll show you a photograph where the primary criticism against me was, you have no experience working in Dharamsala even for a single day. You have not worked as a member of parliament or a minister. So how can you jump from youth activist straight to the post of prime ministership? So that was the criticism. Anyway, we were the remaining candidates. In some ways, this is a Tibetan-style election campaign, except for some Americanized youth with assertive negative campaign in some section. But generally, our election was friendly. For example, we shared taxi rides, we shared meals. With Tenzing Tedongla, we shared 12 hours taxi ride from Dharamsala to Delhi. And obviously, it was, we started in the afternoon, so it was getting late, and it was during the monsoon season. So the road was filled with potholes. So it was not a obviously pleasant ride, but still, nonetheless, we were at the back of the taxi. So we're going through that. Obviously, you fall asleep. Then you wake up. Then you realize how smooth the roads in America, even though with the deficit roads aren't that good. So it was very bumpy. And then suddenly we realized this taxi driver doesn't consider what we call street lights as that important. So even this, right, we were like, quite shocked and say, wait, if this is the way we go for another 4 or 5 hours, then we might be in danger. But then you are so exhausted, you fall asleep. Then suddenly I woke up, then realized that this taxi driver also was so tired, he stopped the car by the roadside, by the highway side. And then he also dozed off. So then I looked around. There's a lot of trucks passing by, with like only a few feet away. So any truck could have given a nudge and we could have been in the river. So we share meals, we meet on the way. So it was a friendly match. We kept it as positive as one possibly could be. So it wasn't any nasty camping as such. So this was the debate organized in New York, and so organizers, as you can see at the backdrop, there's the Tibetan national flag. So here I was talking to mainly monk audience in South India, I think mostly in Menkot area. Here I went to visit institute with students or children with disabilities, Here I was in Simla talking to students, to primary school. So that's one of my campaign posters, actually. Those are my 3 principles on which, that was my campaign platform: unity, innovation, and self-reliance. But anyway, these posters are all made by supporters, and I have no control over it. Interestingly, actually, some of my supporters made a website with the snow line as the symbol, And because my second name is Lion, Lobsang Sangay is second name. And it so happened that our national flag also have lion, two lion. And the election symbol that I also got through lottery, I was also snow lion. So a lot of coincidence, yeah. So this young boy, if you go to YouTube, you will see he composed a rap song promoting me and my candidacy. His father is a big time he made a lot of videos and DVDs of my campaign. So it's in Darjeeling, my school. So it's one of the Tibetan settlements. You might not notice because of the sun. Actually, it is in Ladakh. I think 3,700-800 meters high. It was in March, minus degrees, very cold actually. So all you can see, all of them wrapped up. At the back side, there was my room actually where I slept, I think. And at night you have to put on this heater with a cylinder, gas cylinder. And the heat was, for some reason, I think gas leaked, and I had a close call actually. But I'm alive here, so And then again, you can see, this is near the border of Tibet, because March 20th or 19th, on the day it was minus 40 degrees. So when I say the Tibetan election, Tibetans are scattered in 30 countries, even in India, 50 some places. So there's border of Tibet, and minus 40 degrees. These are the local election officials. They're carrying, the ballot papers on donkeys or horses, and the people walk for a few hours, in 3 to 6, even 10 hours to vote. So it's a major undertaking. So. And then if you go down to south, to Bandra settlement, there around March 20th, I don't know, but April, May, the temperature will be plus 40 degrees Celsius, So from Alaska to Australia, you have to cross continents and countries, and Brahmaputra River. I'll share that story later. This is in Dharamsala. Again, a bit of negative campaign. As you can see, there are posters, my campaign posters behind. And in English, it says, no experience, some of the supporters of the other side. And then in Tibetan, it says, nyamnyung me, no experience again, So even though you paste your posters, they make it sure that, that my weakness is being noticed. So I said, why not we take a picture right in front of those? So I took that picture, yeah. And the Boston Globe, when they published the front page article, that was the picture, actually, I think.
But it actually says no ex-prince.
Yes.
So that's good. You're not from a royal family.
No, it does say no ex-prince, yeah, I think. Once it's experience as well, yeah. But Tibetan is very clear, nyamnyung me, very simple, straightforward. So we have a bit of, should I say, Americanized or Indianized youth, And this is the football team in South Belakopi. The one holding the ball is our Tibet national football team's goalkeeper. So he told me to kick a ball, and I did, and I scored. So, Bangs, this is my 15 minutes of fame, so to speak, after the vote, Some Indian journalists wanted to ask me questions. Not just Indian, actually, tons of media were there, actually, that day. So this is inside the Tibetan parliament. So we have 43 members of parliament, and in Dharamsala, yes, in India. So this side, all the ministers, the Prime Minister, Samdhara Rinpoche, and ministers sit, and the rest are all member of parliament here. So we have representatives from 5 4 Buddhist sects and Pembo sect, and 10 from 3 regions, 2 from Europe, now 2 from America. So we will have 44 members of parliament. And so these are the people I have to deal with. We have 2 parliamentary sessions, winter session and summer session. And winter is when the budget is being discussed and approved, and summer all the social, political, economy issues. So they are considered my, should I say, the opponent as far as power is concerned. So they're all veterans, so I'm sure they're all waiting for me to come. So this is the ballot paper, as you can see. So you get election symbol, your name, and photograph also, so that you make no mistakes. You must have this green book. This is what we call freedom voluntary tax. It's kind of a contradiction. It's voluntary, but you have to pay tax, though. It's a freedom tax. So if you pay this, if you hold this book, then you are considered a Tibetan citizen, and you get to vote. On the day of the election in Dharamsala. So this time it seems around 82,000 Tibetans registered out of 110,000 eligible voters, of which I think 50,000 voted, which means 60% turnout, around 60% turnout. Oh, so he's our present sitting Prime Minister who is casting his ballot. So what does it mean, democracy without state? Here I use democracy in minimal sense, free speech to a great extent, and essentially, 3 pillars of democracy. So judiciary, legislation, and executive branch. We have that. And then, you get right to vote to elect your leader. And there is a contradiction, paradoxes between democracy and exile, because when you're in exile, it's an exile movement, you emphasize unity, you emphasize single leadership, you emphasize single voice, because you have one goal, to restore freedom in Tibet. But when you include, or rather embrace democracy, so unity has to, the democracy emphasizes or requires diversity, single leadership, opposition parties, one voice, free speech. So there's a contradiction. So in some ways, I'll show you some of the exiled governments, you will see that most of them have not adopted democracy because there's underlying contradiction or paradox between the two. So Tibetan government exile, we are trying to do that. So there's a lot of paradoxes, the contradiction that you see, challenges. So this is kind of a test whether democracy can work without state, because if you go by the definition of democracy by Robert Dahl and Schumpeter and all that, they require state. But here we are having democracy without state. And then there's Buddhism and freedom, because if you are Buddhist, you pray, you worship to good karma for your next life. But democracy, you emphasize freedom in this life, and then traditional and democratic legitimacy. So with the Chinese government, the question of legitimacy, whether the Tibetan government exile enjoys legitimacy or not, Chinese government says it does not. But what we say is we do. Because not only we have traditional historical legitimacy, now we have democratic legitimacy as well, because Tibetans exile vote, participate, and elect our leader. So this is some of for those students who want to study exile, this is a school of thought that you can study, because there has been many successful exile cases. Spanish, I just included there. There's a question whether it succeeded or not. But many of the exile governments or organizations succeeded in returning to their homeland in one form or the other, either by restoring democracy or independence or freedom or autonomy. In the case of Aceh, it will be autonomy, And then we are not alone. So there are a few other exile governments in this world as well. And some are just a website, but still, they make their presence is felt virtually. And there are some serious exile governments as well. So you can see Uyghur, Burma, Now, what does it mean? As His Holiness Dalai Lama announced that he will retire from his political role, which means now at the end of May, we will have a special meeting. We have a parliamentary session, and special meeting will discuss the role of His Holiness, because His Holiness has been insistent, very insistent, he's persistent. He has stated very, very strongly that he wants to retire, and people have rejected it, rather appealed to him not to retire for several times. He is persistent now. We have no option but to accept his kind of request. Having said that, it's not easy for us to say accept his absolute retirement. So obviously at the end of May we will have a special meeting where we'll discuss the role of His Holiness, most likely as an elder statesman, and then the elected Prime Minister will be the head of the government and will be the political face and the spokesman for the Tibetan people. So when I say Tibetan government exile, it is a government, functioning government exile. So there are 460 some employees in Dharamsala alone. There are 7 ministers, and each department runs different programs. For example, Education Minister runs about 150 schools, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And the Religion Department has around 250 plus monasteries. And then Health Ministry has about 70 to 80 clinics, hospitals, and things like that. So it's a functioning, effective government. And we have 12 semi-embassies around the world, one in New York and in Geneva, Paris, Brussels, South Africa, Taiwan, Australia, so many places. So we do have a court as well. It's called Supreme Judicial Commission, which decides all civil cases. We can't decide on criminal cases because it touches on sovereignty, so we refer it to, we have no option, also we refer it to the Indian court system. But civil cases are decided by our court, and then Parliament in exile, as I said, passes legislation in the winter session and summer session like any other democratic country. So obviously, you can see China daily, that's 2009. And recently, People's Daily, I think, had a column saying terrorists, quote-unquote terrorists, likely to head the government exile. And they put the label terrorist to me, so I'm already labeled a terrorist by People's Daily. I'm sure they will do so tomorrow, day after more will come. So they have been questioning, whether Tibetan government exile is secular or not. But after this election, they cannot criticize that, because His Holiness Dalai Lama will be withdrawing from political role, and the next Prime Minister, whoever gets elected, all 3 of us, as you can see from the photograph, are all lay people, secular people. So if you go by 1960 to 1990, His Holiness Dalai Lama appointed Kalon Tripas. 91-2000, Dalai Lama nominated candidates and the Parliament approved. 2001-2011, directly elected by the people as the head administrator. Now the change will be third directly elected head of the government in exile, and so voter turnout, 67,000 people registered in 2001. It increased to 72,000 in 2006. 2011, 82,000 registered voters. So we'll have around 60% turnout this time. So it has been increasing rapidly. This time the election was very exciting, at least in the Tibetan context, and a lot of enthusiasm and increased participation. So now, so this is where I'm blamed as well as given credit for. The old rules of Tibetan campaigning is no debates at all. So we didn't have debates among candidates. There was actually, last time there was just for namesake. So no campaign, or you don't visit the electorates, you don't visit voters. And the standard line was, I will not stand for the posts, but if people vote me in, then I'll serve, So that was the, so new rules, actually I'm blamed and given credit for this. So I literally went, I used what I call Americanized, Indianized kind of a camping style. I literally went to all the Tibetan settlements in India, remote corners, and in Europe and in the US. But then I had to find a middle way where I should not be seen as too Americanized or too Indianized. Then I'll be blamed for being too aggressive, which is not so appreciated in the Tibetan community. So I had to campaign without campaigning. So ask for vote without saying so that even if I lose, so I remain a Tibetan in that sense. So I win as a Tibetan even though I might lose the post. So I had to think a lot. So Kennedy School, Harvard helped me a lot in finding the middle ground. So it seems it worked fine. So if you're interested, I'll let you know, actually. When you travel, literally you have to travel for 20 hours by taxi from one place to another. Then you reach in the middle of the night, either midnight or past midnight. You sleep 4 or 5 hours, give talk in the morning, in the afternoon, then travel another 10, 12 hours, then sleep for a couple of hours. So that's how it was. So finally, we made it to the destination. So those kinds of experience, are quite challenging. So as you can see, I said most of the things. You have to literally travel to countries, not a district or even a country, right? Barack Obama had to travel all the way only to Hawaii, right? Other than that, he didn't have to travel that far. But we really have to travel everywhere. So it could be minus or plus 40 degrees. Or we had 17 rounds of debates between me and the former prime minister. And crossed Brahmaputra River, 20 hours, 5 countries. I did 9 in 5 countries in 9 days. That was the final stretch. So what is the reward? If I get elected, what will be my salary? My salary will be $400 a month. And I believe there is no provision for cook, because the present prime minister, as you saw, he is a monk. He lives a very Gandhian, austere kind of life. And he lives in a very simple way. He doesn't need cook, So that's the reward. But other than that, the bigger reward, again, the bigger reward, obviously, as a Tibetan, I see this as an honor, really, as a privilege to serve your people and your country. So as far as personal gain or interest is concerned, or physical comfort is concerned, I think it's on the minimum side, but the mental satisfaction or deeper satisfaction is concerned, I think it's on the maximum side. So that's what you're looking for, and we will know in 2 days' time whether I get elected or not, and this is what I'm going to do. So, Harvard connection. I took a course at the Kennedy School on how to run an election campaign. I used some part of it, and it seemed to have worked. And the philosophical underpinning, I used Isaiah Berlin, Max Weber, as you know. Mine was more like it was not a vertical kind of campaign model. It was more like horizontal. Because, if you follow liberalism or Max Weber, any kind of institutionalization will attract bureaucracy and vested interests. So mine was like I traveled all around, had my contacts at local level, and more at grassroots, it was a bottom-up kind of approach. It worked. And if you want to run for an election, you have to have your narrative right, public narrative. Again, I took a course at Kennedy School by Marshall Ganj. And, he taught Obama, and it seems to have worked for Obama. It worked for me, too, actually. So I got my public narrative right. And then you take courses at leadership. And it does help you, the holding environment. So normally, as a normal person, whenever there's tension or conflict or criticism, you take it personally. Sometimes you respond abruptly or, you don't, actually. And then my training or education here at Harvard about China, India, about human rights, all these were part of the package. So I don't want to put too much pressure on you all. If I fail, it will be partly because Harvard didn't prepare me well, If I succeed, it will be, again, a partnership on our part. Yeah. So again, George Bush and Barack Obama studied here. So it did help me. So they said, a monk put it best. He said, we don't have to question him. Look at the factory he's coming from, which manufactured Lobsang Sangay. That's what he said. factory manufactured George W. Bush and Barack Obama. That's Harvard University. So it should be good. So these are the things worked for me, and I used a lot of knowledge and wisdom that I've learned here at Harvard from East Asian Legal Studies program. I see some of my friends and colleagues are here. I'm very proud to be associated with them. And I'll take piece of Harvard with me and do the best I could. Hope I succeed. If I don't, I'll come back and blame you all guys. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your talk. And the floor is now open for questions.
Have you ever been able to live in Tibet itself? Oh, is it on? Yes. Have you ever been able to live in Tibet?
Unfortunately, no. I went to Beijing and Shanghai in 2005. I went to Beda, Beijing University, and Minority Nationalities University to share my thoughts with Chinese scholars. As you know, I have organized a series of conferences here at Harvard, 7 of them, including 2 between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Chinese scholars. So I've been quite active in track 2 diplomacy. I've met hundreds of Chinese students and scholars here. So when I was in Beijing, I hoped to go to Tibet. But I was told that I cannot go because there aren't people to receive me in Lhasa. And I told that official, I said, China has 1.3 billion people. I've never heard of shortage of people to receive me in Lhasa. That's the reason they gave me, and I was not allowed to go to Tibet, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious about how you financed your campaign, and also if you know to what extent the other candidates traveled to different regions, and if you might say something about the change in this campaign from previous campaigns in terms of having the financial backing to be able to do something like the extensive campaigning that you did.
Actually, Tibetan campaign doesn't cost much, as long as the most expensive part is your airfare, international airfare. Once you're in India, then you are invited by local organizers to give talks in different settlements. And if you, for $100, you can reach anywhere from Delhi to Dharamsala, Delhi to Bangalore or Darjeeling, anywhere. So once you're there locally, local organizers will set up meetings, and then you go about giving talks. And only the other costs are your posters and the DVDs you make. So you get individual sponsors for those posters. And for $100, you can have around around 2,000 posters. For $200, you can have 5,000 plus posters. That's sufficient for a campaign. If you want to make DVDs for 50 cents, at most $1, you can make a DVD. So if you want to make 500 DVDs, that's $250 or $500. So that's how you, in that sense, it's relatively cheap, actually. And as far as international airfare is concerned, if, let's say, Radio Free Asia, Voice of America, or Tibetan Women's, whoever organizes a debate, they pay the airfare. So you go there, and once you're there, you go about, giving talks to local people, or sometimes you have to rent a car. Again, for $50, you can rent a car, or $100, you can rent a car for 2-3 days. So it's relatively. We are not talking in terms of Obama's planning to raise $1 billion. That's not how much it costs. It just costs you at most $1,000, $2,000. You're talking about, very limited amount.
Did the other candidates travel as much as you did?
Yes, not in the preliminary round, but in the final round they did.
Lobsang, when was the Constitution created? Is it a work in progress? And from the looks of it, it looks. I don't know if people heard me, but I asked when the Constitution was created, if it's a work in progress. And on the face of it, it looks like the legislative branch and the executive branch, which is running the departments, is the same, would be under the Kalon Tripa?
The constitution was created, one in 1963. And then we changed a lot of those, because that constitution was created for Tibet, for inside Tibet. And in 1991, we drafted another constitution called Charter, which is mainly for exile administration. And then now we are going to make a lot of amendments to that charter, because we are going to change a lot of provisions regarding His Holiness Dalai Lama's authority. And then we'll have amended charter now. It's a different system actually. Legislative branch, the parliament will have members elected independently by the people, and Kalon Tripa is elected independently, because we don't have party system. So the prime minister does not control majority in the parliament. So they are independent individuals in the parliament, and the Kalon Tripa is also independent prime minister.
But runs the department's health, education.
Yes, Kalon Tripa prime minister appoints 7 ministers and runs all the departments. The parliament passes legislation twice a year, and that's their job. Yeah. And then they oversee or monitor whether executive branch is, conducting effectively or not.
Hi, thank you. I was curious that how you counteracted the criticisms about having a lack of experience. How did you make your case to the public that would counteract the effect of that? Number one, and just the second question, what were the main issues that seemed to differentiate yourself from the other candidates? Were there any issues, or was it a matter of sort of who personally spoke to the voters more?
Lack of experience, yeah, I think up front, I acknowledge I've never worked in Dharamsala, so I don't have that experience. And then I defined the role of Kalon Tripa as 5. One, you have to understand the situation in Tibet. And second, once you have understood, you have to advocate and educate, create awareness at the international level and seek support at the international level. And third is engage with Chinese people and confront Chinese government policies. And fourth is to sustain the support of Indian people and India. And fifth is administration of the exile government. So criticism of my lack of experience was the administration part. So I kind of defined it as role of Kalon Tripa as 5-fold, and one is the administration. And so that's how and then people seem to have resonated actually. In some ways there was an atmosphere for change. And in fact, it seems they were looking for a candidate who had least association with Dharamsala. So in fact, they wanted a candidate who had, so to speak, least experience. So that's why they voted for me overwhelmingly in the preliminary round. So it often happens, So George Bush and Al Gore had much more experience than Bush. But it's the mood of the people at the environment, So it seems their mood was for change, and I tapped into it, and then it worked. And as far as issues are concerned, not much difference actually. Tashi Wongdila on the center, because he was ambassador to Brussels till recently. So his line was everything as it is, So that was his line, because he cannot say anything than that. Otherwise they will say, "What have you been doing?" Right? And Tenzing Terdongla was more on kind of a little bit on the side. He was for self-determination, more on the independent side. So I was right in the middle. I was for middle way, that is seeking genuine autonomy within China. But I will use innovative ways to make ourselves more effectively. So in some ways, I was right in the middle of not as it is, but not such a radical or drastic change, but for a change nonetheless, yeah.
Have you had any contact with Chinese officials when they come abroad, for example, to the United States, and how have they treated you?
During the campaign, in the last 1 year, or
My point is, have you been in contact with any Chinese officials?
in the last year or before?
Well, in the last couple of years.
In the last couple of years, other than the conferences we have organized here, and some of the officials or scholars whom I met at Harvard, outside of Harvard, I have not. Having said that, when I was in Dharamsala, a lot of Chinese do come to Dharamsala, and a lot of media, quote unquote, media people were there to interview me as well. And of course, I shared my thoughts with them because we have nothing to hide, you know. Yes. No, here at Harvard, you know, we meet on an individual basis and we have frank exchange of views. Nothing differently, actually. I've organized many conferences here, and many Chinese have come, and some are good friends of mine, you know, and some are ignorant, and some are nationalistic, some are liberal, you know, some are open-minded, and they treat you, they see you differently, you know, and from what kind of perspective they come from. And from my side, I've been open because I believe in dialogue, and I've organized conferences to engage in dialogue with Chinese students and scholars. I have made a lot of efforts, actually, towards the line. In some ways, my visit to China and organizing conferences, to some extent, became a liability. At least some people try to make it a liability. It was part of a criticism against me as well, that I'm soft on China, because I've organized conferences, things like that. But people voted me, at least in the preliminary round, quite overwhelmingly, which means it's interesting. People seem to agree with my line of thinking, and at least that's how I should think. Yeah, so that's where the majority of people seem to be, at least.
From the photographs, it appears that monks and nuns can vote. And I wonder if there's any evidence that prominent lamas endorsed you or any other candidates.
Prominent lamas did not endorse me outrightly, but I'm also kind of labeled as the monks like me. You see, monks who they kind of, it's considered that absolute majority of them were behind me. That's the label. But no lamas endorsed me. But who endorsed me were former political prisoners, Tibetans from Tibet, who have come recently from Tibet. Among them, some very prominent ones. Tana Jigme Sangbola, who spent 36 years in prison. Palden Gyatso, 33 years in prison. Phagdo, he spent just a year or two. And someone who participated in 2008 uprising. So they also saw me as someone. It seems I've resonated with them as well. So many prominent former political prisoners endorsed me. Actually, if you go by endorsement, the former prime minister had a lot more endorsement, a lot more organization, a lot more people. Actually, when I was in Dharamsala, I had an event to release my booklet and DVD, and my supporters were looking for someone to introduce me, and they could not find any of prominence, you know. For his event, a line of former ministers and present ministers, everybody, not present ministers, former ministers, the member of parliament, former department secretary, all line up and come with him. Yeah, I was essentially, when I was traveling, also essentially it was a kind of one-man show. You know, I was traveling with my small handbag and get off the plane, and they say, "So you're alone?" Yes, and he had an entourage of 4 or 5 people, you know. So yes, that way, yeah, a lot of endorsement for him, lack of endorsement from my side, but more grassroots endorsement, so to speak, that's where the vote was.
I guess I missed the chance to question you during campaign, so now I ask my questions. I guess what I'm asking is, you didn't try to, find a vote from China, from Tibet, real Tibet. I'm assuming that's the case. So Chinese government still can easily dismiss your legitimacy as a representative of all the Tibetan people. That's just a comment. Secondly, a question will be, what would be changed after Dalai Lama retired from his political position? Well, I'm particularly interested in the China relationship. if you're still thinking the middle way, my question will be, Dalai Lama will be very successful in terms of international campaign, but with dealing with China, the middle way, so far, haven't not produced very good, substantial results. So why you think you can pursue the same way and to achieve concrete results?
It's true that physically Tibetans inside cannot vote, but through many ways they have shown that they know about this election and they have participated through other means. For example, going to a monastery, lighting butter lamps, firecrackers, sending me white scarves all the way from Lhasa, all over Tibet.
So you still receive some?
Oh, a lot of. Now, actually, I'm quite emboldened. I won't shy away from challenging the party secretary of TAR, if we put in the ballot box with Tibetans inside Tibet. Actually, from what I know, it seems our DVDs of, our election debates were very popular inside Tibet. I was just sharing with someone, actually, that now to call from India to China in Tibet is just 1 rupee per minute. That's like 2 cents a minute. So a lot of people call back and forth. And then for a whole year, this election becomes very, very energetic, dynamic, and exciting. So the talk of the town for almost a year was about this election campaign. And a lot of people call in Radio Free Asia and Voice America, and they also, say their preference. And I was told that majority of them kind of preferred me. So it's quite well known, actually. Tomorrow, just watch. Something will happen inside Tibet. That's why I think there's a preemptive move from the Chinese government to prevent any foreigners from going to Tibet Autonomous Region for next few months. And you can see a lot of restriction imposed in eastern Tibet as well. So they see some sense that something is going on. And I have received a lot of messages, sometimes emails, Facebook messages, This is just a one-time account. I'm just sending you, showing my solidarity with you, things like that. A lot of white scarves from Tibet. And then you do meet some Tibetans. I was in Varanasi, and that's a holy place in India. And a lot of Tibetans come. I think 2,000 or 3,000 Tibetans were coming. And many of them wanted to meet me on the quiet. They took me to some places they were staying and asked me to give short talks, and then gave me white scarves and took a lot of pictures with me. I said, are you not scared? But said they will do something to hide it, hide and take it back. So yeah, Tibetans inside Tibet do know about it quite a lot. A middle way, I think, middle way is the policy of the Tibetan government. Middle way essentially means His Holiness Dalai Lama seeks genuine autonomy within China, within the framework of the Chinese constitution. So he's not challenging sovereignty or territorial integrity of China. That is the Tibetan government's policy, and if I get elected, I must abide by the policy, and I will do so.
Okay, thank you. We all know that the Dalai Lama has been the leader for many, many years. And you said, you listed the 5 roles or functions of the government will play. So I wonder, after the retirement of Dalai Lama, what will be the real relations between you, if you are elected, and Dalai Lama? Thank you.
His Holiness Dalai Lama is our leader, will always remain my spiritual leader. He will always be my source of inspiration. So our respect and love and loyalty for him is very strong. So it's not so much to replace him, but rather to live up to his expectation and fulfill his vision. Vision is that if I get elected, I should be the head of the government and become the political face and spokesman for the Tibetan people. And I will do to the best of my capacity to be as effective spokesperson for Tibetan people as I could. And
that means you will be a follower instead of a true leader.
I will be a follower, and I will be taking in charge of the government and the political side of the Tibet issue.
You seem to be a really different candidate from the people who've gone before you and from the other candidates. And why do you think that people wanted a change and would have endorsed you to be the next leader?
I think you have to ask them, I think, you know. If I go down the list, it might be too self-serving, actually. I don't say any votes here, Alison. It seems people wanted change. I think more than people wanted action, I think. Tibetan tradition tend to be, as I said, you know, other candidates, they say, I'm not standing, but if voted, I'll serve. But rather I went and met people and I told them, you know, if you vote for me, I'll serve, you know. So I kind of put myself out there. And I think people like that, actually, you know, who takes responsibility and upfront says, I will be accountable for your votes. So I regard your votes as precious. And I'm here to share my ideas. If you like it, to consider me, you know. I think going and meeting with the people, that's what I introduce. So that shows direct accountability. It seems to have resonated with people, yeah. And then in the preliminary round, I was the only one who traveled to most of the places. So I think that's what this, I think, see in me was that I could be a really active kind of candidate, and perhaps future Kalon Tripa, that I will be really active. The fact that I've traveled to such distances, you know, and remote places means I will do the same if I get elected. So that's they wanted to see, I think. And essentially, yeah, they wanted to see change in the government, something new, something dynamic, something innovative, and that's what I promise, and I have to deliver if I get elected, yes.
Thanks very much for your very interesting and personalized presentation. I enjoyed it a lot. My question is about, follows on one of the earlier questions about legitimacy. And how do you see separating the clerical from the secular and the direction of the government in exile that you described towards a more democratic system, either helping or leading to questions or whatever in terms of legitimacy, not only for the people that you govern, but as you represent this government to the outside world? In other words, how will the outside world view this further separation from the Dalai Lama to a government led by you, and then how will that then affect your relations with the rest of the world and other governments?
If you define legitimacy as, you know, people's mandate, you know, then if I get elected, I will have the legitimacy because I will be voted by the people freely and with democratic mandate. If you look at Jasmine Revolution, they say they want to remove the government without legitimacy. They want a legitimate government. In short, it's translated as democratic elected leader. If that is the definition of legitimacy, I will have that because I will be elected by the people. Second legitimacy is traditional legitimacy because His Holiness Dalai Lama is an undisputed leader of Tibetan people inside and outside. And he, for one, is extended his credibility and legitimacy to this process by saying, I am withdrawing from the political role and handing over to you. You have my blessing, you have my support, and you go about representing and speaking for Tibetan people. You know, so he is also extending his traditional legitimacy to the process. So I'll have, if elected, both traditional legitimacy and democratic legitimacy. You know, and then if freedom-loving people, if you know, countries with democracy system believe in, you know, democracy and people's mandate, then I should have the legitimacy to speak at least for the people who voted me, and to those people inside Tibet as well, because given a choice, they will also participate in the election. And then one thing is very clear: I will have much more legitimacy or absolute legitimacy than the party secretary of Tibet Autonomous Region. Right? He would have no mandate from the people, and I will have the democratic mandate of the people. In that sense, actually, one reason the Chinese government is labeling me, because they want to distract from this question of legitimacy, because I will have the democratic mandate, whereas the Chinese leaders in Tibet or Tibet Autonomous Region don't have that mandate.
Lobsang, thank you. I actually have 3 questions for you, if you don't mind. The first question is, what's your agenda for your first 100 days if you're elected? My second question is regarding the, somewhat related to His Holiness the Dalai Lama's retirement. How would you go about the continuing dialogue with the Chinese government? For example, the special envoy to His Holiness, will he become, the title will be changed to special envoy to the Kalon Tripa? Okay, I think of a third question now. But for now, just 2 questions.
Thank goodness you forgot a third one. It might be equally tough. The Tibetan election doesn't work like this. What are your agenda for 100 days, first year, things like that. I introduced the concept of manifesto, in this election. So I had 10 questions, I had answered them, in which I emphasized, number 1 priority is always and will always remain to restore freedom in Tibet, to recognize and respect Tibetan people's dignity and identity. So that will always be the number 1 priority. And other than that, as I listed, international awareness, sustaining support of India, and having conversation with Chinese people, and domestically, yes, improving education will be my number 1 priority. That's what I've said. As far as His Holiness envoys are concerned, I think we will debate this at the end of May. A special session will debate, and then you're right, actually, without having some role for His Holiness in this, governing.
We have time for one last question. Yes,
Just how long is the term?
5 years.
5 years.
Okay.
And one last one. Will you have Secret Service protection?
Secret Service protection, yeah, I will have.
He left the room, so
I think he's there. No, I will have 1 person. Yeah, I can, again, I just said $400. But there's the Prime Minister's office will have around 30 or 40 staff members. So there will be chief of staff, like any other government, chief of staff, joint secretary, things like that. And then, yes, 1 security person with me and a driver and a car.
when you're visiting the states, you'll have.
It all depends. I don't like those kind of things, so I might, maybe within India, security person, when I come to the States or Europe, I don't think it's necessary. Because see, if they want to get you, they'll get you no matter what, 1 or 10 is not going to protect you. So, you just leave it to your karma and go about doing your business. It's an extra cost. Our government doesn't have such high.
When you visit the states, is there a level of acknowledgement? Because it took us a lot of years to get His Holiness head of state designation, so he was protected when he visited.
By the State Department. Not so sure.
No discussion yet?
Yes, no discussion yet. I think this Prime Minister, he is a Gandhian, he said he doesn't need much, yeah. Lydia, so final question.
Dalai Lama prefer one or the other of the candidates?
You got to ask him when he comes next time. But there was a long life prayer offering to His Holiness the Dalai Lama recently, just on 2 days ago, and by the Tibetan government officials, in which he said, it looks now we will have a young Kalon Tripa from the younger generation. And he did say he has, his blessing is with the young Kalon Tripa, and he urged all the staff members to support the next young Kalon Tripa, and as same as before, he said he will always be there. So his blessing is already given.
Wonderful. I think this will conclude our this afternoon's session. I'd like to thank Dr. Sangay and you all for your attendance. Thank you very much.